So the tactical skill I'm going to be teaching today is man-to-man press coverage in the game of football. Now, man-to-man coverage in the game of football is when, as a defensive back, you are guarding a wide receiver, just you two, and you have to follow him all around the field no matter where he goes. There's two variations of man. I'm talking about press coverage right now, which is when you're up on the line before the ball is snapped, basically a yard off of the receiver. And then there's also off man, where you're a few yards off of the line. That's usually used in different situations, but we're going to talk about that later. Some of the things that you need to know if you are running press man is in the first 5 yards, you can be physical. The rules state that in the first 5 yards, as a defensive back, you can have your hands on, whatever. You can't grab or tackle, but you can be physical with the guy. But after 5 yards, you have to kind of relieve the physicality and then just trail him, just follow him around. But in the first 5 yards, you can be super physical. So you got to be careful not to get a pass interference call after those first 5 yards. Some of the things that you would use this technique in, and it would work if you are faster than the receiver you are guarding, or if you're stronger than the receiver you are guarding. This is because when you're up against the receiver so tight, if the receiver is going to be a lot faster than you, it's going to be very easy for him to get separation because you guys are starting in a very similar spot, and it will be easier for him to get separation than if you were playing off man, because if you play off man, you have a lot more space to read what he's doing, and you have a lot more ground to cover in terms of covering him. And then you can be, if you're stronger than him, it's also a good idea to use man, because at the line you can be a lot more physical and you can really shake him and try to get him off his route and mess up the timing with the quarterback. Also, another situation you would use it is if you have safety help over the top, which I'll go into a little bit more depth later. But if you have a safety that you know is covering the deep part of the field behind you, you can get up and man, because you know that if you do get beat or if he does have a step on you, you have help. And then another situation you could use is if there's a lot of blitzing going on, if all the guys in the box and linebackers and the D linemen are coming in for the blitz. That means the ball is going to be thrown very quickly, and you don't want to have separation from your man. If the ball's going to be thrown quickly, you want to be up on him so the man won't be open, basically. And then press coverage isn't really affected by any game conditions, really. Snow, rain, all that. It doesn't really matter. It's one of those things that's more interpersonal. The situations you would use it are situations, well, you wouldn't use it, I should say, in situations of second and long and third and long, where the offense has to try to gain as many yards as they can. This is because the receivers are likely going to run really deep routes, and having to run with your guy for 20, 30 yards like that, it's more likely than not they're going to get separation to be open. That's a situation where you'd want to use off man. So you'd want to use press man when it's a situation of second and short, third and short, where they're looking for very quick passes. You would use press man because you'd be up on the receiver and it'd be a lot harder to complete those throws. Another situation you would use it is if the wide receiver is on the line of scrimmage. If he's off the line of scrimmage, a yard or two off the line of scrimmage, and you walk up, you're not allowed to, as a defender, pass the line of scrimmage. So that's just a little bit extra separation. It's a lot harder to use this technique when you're farther back away from the guy. Then you would switch over to off man and back up even farther. And then against tight ends, people that are down in the three-point stance, or against guys that are in the slot, so they're not the end man on the line, they're kind of a lot closer to the middle of the field, you wouldn't necessarily want to use press, because it's a lot harder to judge and to force them where you want to go if they have all the room they want to move. So some of the technical aspects and technical options of press man is to keep square. I refer to it a lot of times as basketball. Like in basketball, you want to keep the guy in front of you, stay square. You don't want to open your hips. We call it a kick step is what we use. So when you're in front of the guy, instead of having to open up your hips and run as soon as the ball snapped, you try to stay in front of him. And if he moves to the left or the right, then you would just shuffle over and try to stay in front of him and stay square. You would also want to keep inside leverage. If you have one safety behind you, force him outside. This is because it's a lot harder to make the outside throws. But if you have two safeties behind you, it'd be a lot easier to just force him inside, because you have more guys willing to help. Another thing too is you got to always watch the hips. Very similar again to basketball. Hips always are going to take you where you want to go. Never want to look into the eyes, because people use heads and shoulders and stuff like that. So you always want to make sure you're really grounded and you don't want to do too much. And then some of the mistakes that you see a lot are people lunging on the snap of the ball. So like when you're man up, a lot of people want to get super physical with their hands, which is good. But if you lunge at the receiver and you miss, you're basically beat, and it could be a touchdown. So you want to be very patient with how physical you are. And then another mistake, again, is the kick step and the opening hips that I talked about, is when guys are guarding their man, and instead of giving him any sort of resistance at the snap of the ball, they just turn their hips open and let the man run free. And that's not good, because you're going to lose a race because he's starting facing the end zone and your back's to the end zone. So you want to make it as hard as you can for him to score the touchdown.